It is good to be here, at home. Dr. Lloyd Braswell, pastor of Chester Baptist Church, told a story the other Sunday, and I thought I would pass it along to you. There was a little boy who wanted a new bicycle, and so he thought he would ask Jesus for it. In fact, he decided to write Jesus a letter. So he wrote, "Dear Jesus, I want a new bicycle, and I've been perfect for a year." Well, he knew that wasn't right, so he tore it up and started again. "Dear Jesus, I want a new bicycle, and I've been a pretty good boy most of the time." And he thought, no, that's not right either. So he started for the third time. "Dear Jesus, I want a new bicycle, and I would like to be a good boy." But then he thought, no, that's not even true. And so he went into the living room where there was a statue of Mary. He grabbed the statue, wrapped it in a towel, threw it under his bed, and he wrote, "Dear Jesus, if you ever want to see your mother again." Bad. But oh, how we do try to manipulate God to get what we want. Dr. Somerville has been preaching a series this summer on the Old Testament prophets. Last Sunday, you heard the first part of the Hosea-Gomer story, and so today we'll look at the rest of the story. I can't think of the Old Testament text for today without thinking of Frederick Buechner. Frederick Buechner is one of my favorite people, although I know him only through his writings. He is a poet, a theologian, a very gifted writer, and his little book, Peculiar Treasures, has been a joy to me through the years. In it, he gives various little profiles of biblical characters. And so I want to tell you what Frederick Buechner wrote about Gomer. Now, you will recognize the first part of this if you read your bulletin last Sunday, but I'm going to read it in its entirety. "She was always good company, a little heavy with the lipstick maybe, a little less than choosy about men and booze, a little loud, but great on a party, and always good for a laugh. And then the prophet Hosea came along wearing a sandwich board, which read, 'The end is at hand' on one side and 'watch out' on the other. The first time he asked her to marry him, she thought he was kidding. The second time, she knew he was serious, but she thought he was crazy. The third time, she said yes. He wasn't exactly a swinger, but he had a kind face, and he was generous, and he wasn't all that crazier than everybody else. Besides, any fool could see that he loved her. Give or take a little, she even loved him back for a while. And they had 3 children that Hosea named with really strange names like, not pitied, for God will no longer pity Israel now that she's gone to the dogs. So that every time the roll was called in school, Hosea would be scoring a prophetic bullseye in absentia. But everyone could see that the marriage was not going to last, and it didn't. While Hosea was off hitting the sawdust trail, Gomer took to hitting as many night spots as she could squeeze into a night. And any resemblance between her next batch of children and Hosea was purely coincidental. It almost killed him, of course. Every time he raised a hand to her, he burst into tears. Every time she raised one to him, he was the one who ended up apologizing. He tried to lock her out of the house a few times when she wasn't in by 5 in the morning, but he always opened the door when she finally showed up and helped her get to bed if she couldn't see straight enough to get there herself. And then one day, she didn't show up at all. He swore this time he was through with her, but of course he wasn't. When he finally found her, she was lying passed out in a highly specialized establishment located above an adult bookstore, and he had to pay the management plenty to get her out of her contract. She lost her front teeth and picked up some scars you had to see to believe, But Hosea had her back again, and that seemed to be all that mattered. He changed his sandwich board to read, "God is love" on the front and "There's no end to it" on the other. And when he stood on the street corner belting out, "How can I give you up, O Ephraim? How can I hand you over, O Israel? For I am God and not man, the Holy One in your midst." Nobody can say how many converts he made, but one thing that's for sure is that including Gomer's, there was seldom a dry eye in the house. Thank you, Frederick Buechner. The story of Hosea's marriage to Gomer is a dramatic metaphor, an allegory. Hosea plays the role of God, and the name Hosea is a variant on the names Joshua and Jesus, and all three names mean Savior. Gomer in the story represents unfaithful Israel. The marriage itself is the covenant relationship which God instituted with Abraham. This is the story of a suffering God who never gives up seeking his own, a God who never stops loving. A God who loves would have been an unimaginable concept in that ancient world. Hosea lived between 700 and 800 BC. There were many gods in that time and place, none to which the concept of loving could be applied. Gods were not loving. Gods were powerful. They could grant life or withhold it. They could send rain or burn up all the crops. Worshippers sought their favor, and they feared their wrath. The ancient people who worshipped these gods lived in fear and dread. They could only hope to please or appease. It never dawned on them that any God could love.